So, this idea of healing may or may not be a word that you associate with what it means to develop yourself to be your best as a leader. I know for me that it was not always the case. In this conversation you're about to watch, I invite you to consider that maybe the reason you pushed play on this video is because some part of you knows in your heart of hearts that in this moment in time that we are all living in today, that healing may be one of the most important pathways for our individual and collective growth. In 2018, I was leading a men's retreat in the mountains of Colorado. It was winter time. It was a group of entrepreneurial men, several hundred, and I was leading an experience. And one of the keynote speakers who was going to be speaking right after the experience I was leading came up to me. At the time, I'd never met this gentleman. His name is Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Today, we're close friends. And Ben was observing the experience that I was leading. And he asked me a question. He said, "Do you realize what's happening here?" And of course, before I got to hear his answer, I thought, well, of course I know what's happening. I teach people how to do this. It's a collective conversation. We've designed questions and choreographed a way for these men to become intimate and vulnerable and to have real, deep, important conversations. I thought, who is this guy to ask me, do I know what's going on here? This is what I do. This is what I teach. And then he said something I had never before considered. He said, what you've created, because he heard me say things like, well, we're scaling up curiosity with this audience. We're scaling up deep listening. He said, maybe, John, what's happening is you are scaling up healing. It was the first time I'd heard that word associated with our work at Exchange. And so I had to ask, I said, well, Ben, what does that mean? How is that possible? And at the time he was doing research for a book that he was writing. And he explained to me that in his research, part of what he was discovering was that our traumas are not necessarily what happened to us, but maybe they're what happened inside of us in the absence of an empathetic witness. And he said, John, this experience that I'm watching that you're leading, he said, you've turned the whole room into empathetic witnesses. Now, from that moment until today, I've become more and more interested in this idea that maybe healing truly is a pathway to human potential. And since that moment, we've actually had countless leaders of organizations, students of our work, audience members of conferences that we've led, who've said something similar, that the experience they are witnessing is one of healing. So maybe it's no surprise that when Raj Sisodia and Nilima Bhat decided they were going to write a book on healing leaders, that I was immediately interested. And I asked them if I could interview them in front of a live audience for a group of our students and any guests that they wanted to invite. And this conversation just took place a few weeks ago. And what we've done is we've edited out the facilitated experience that we led on the front end and the back end. And this is a live experience where I invite Raj and Nilima to talk about their newly released book, Healing Leaders, where they not only unpack the 7 steps to recovery of self, as they subtitled the book, but we also did a real-time live audience poll to find out which of the steps this audience wanted to double-click and go deeper into. So you'll notice we're doing that at one point, and we go further into several of the topics that they present. I hope you find this enjoyable. If you do, like I did and many of our students and members at Exchange did, of course, I encourage you to support the work of Raj and Nilima and purchase a copy or two of their book and share it with others who you think it would be supportive of. My belief, the feeling I have, is that this work that they are offering is needed in our world so much, so deeply. Maybe that's the reason you're watching this right now. I hope you enjoy. Join me in just welcoming up to the stage Raj Sisodia and Nilima Bhat. Raj, as many of you know, is not only a best-selling author and the co-founder of Conscious Capitalism, but Raj, you are recognized as somebody who's really transformed the way that the world sees the purpose of business And you have also given us a front row seat to your own transformation through your writings and teachings over the years. And I'm so honored to call you a teacher and a friend and for you to be here today. And Nilima, we met you via Raj during the pandemic, and you came to our community not once, twice, to share your teachings from Shakti leadership. And your teachings for me and for us about understanding the role of presence and these beautiful distinctions about wholeness, which maybe some of these come forward today, they certainly are represented in this book, were really transformative for us in our ability to navigate our toughest times in a healthy way. And I'm so grateful that you and Raj put this book together, and you're here today, and you're giving me the gift of putting some questions to each of you. So thank you. I was really captivated over the last several days. Raj and Nilima gave me an advanced access to a digital copy of the book. One of the sections of the book, because you talk about 7 steps, and one of these steps that really got my attention was around expressing ourselves. And I'm going to read a passage which will lead to a question to each of you. And you say in the book that expressing yourself is about moving toward the full realization of our boundless potential. Each of us has a role to play in the great symphony of life. And when we rise to express ourselves fully, we add richness to the collective melody of humanity. I love that image. And then finally, expressing yourself is not just a personal act, it is a sacred obligation. And that sentence caused me to pause and think about a whole bunch of things. But what I want to ask each of you is, in what ways is this book a fulfillment of a sacred obligation for each of you? When you hear that, when you reflect on that.
So I think each of us is carrying a piece of the puzzle. We're all here to play our role, as we talked about, to mix metaphors in that symphony or a piece of that puzzle, without which the universe is incomplete. So we are here as a gift, not only to ourselves, we are an incredible gift to ourselves. Just think about what it means to be born a human, to receive the gift of a free human life, right? Not in captivity or slavery, but to be a free human being is an extraordinary gift, perhaps the greatest gift that the universe has to offer. But we are a gift not only to ourselves, but to the world, to the universe. Because through us, something is meant to emerge. And so our soul is yearning to express itself. And the biggest tragedy of a human life is, as I say, many people are born and they live and they die with their music still inside them. And there's nothing more tragic than that. How many Einsteins and how many Beethovens and how many Gandhis have been born and lived and died because they never had the opportunity to express that, to bring it forward. They never had the resources, or they were born in extreme poverty, or they were succumbed to disease, or whatever it is. So I think that's a great gift that we carry. And without giving that gift, we are incomplete in this journey.
The sense that I believe many here will have once they get a copy of the book, and just by being with you all today, is the two of you together have brought your gifts in a way that it's going to be an incredible gift. Nilima, for yourself, in what ways is this book a fulfillment of a sacred obligation?
It is my third book. The first book was the first sacred obligation, which is to integrate my ego and shadow and discover well-being. This was My Cancer Is Me, The Journey from Illness to Wholeness. And I realized the second obligation was to write Shakti Leadership, which is about becoming my own beloved, my own mother, and that kind of psychological wholeness as a woman. And in a way, this is the third sacred obligation, this book, Healing Leaders, because it's a map to enlightenment, really. And that's the third mythic journey we are called to make, right? The first is the quest for adventure, the second is the quest for romance, and the third is the quest for enlightenment. And the day comes where you kind of have that sacred obligation to yourself and to life, to not die unawakened.
Nilima, thank you for that. And that phrase, a map to enlightenment. I'm grateful that you would say something like that to somebody from the outside who maybe hasn't been a student of either of you might hear that and say, well, that's audacious or that's bold. And even if it is, I think it is aligned with what this book offers. The book's subtitle is about the 7 steps to self-recovery. I want to share just a personal experience I had reading the book. And then I want to invite the two of you to give an invitation into each of 6 of the first 7 steps. We're going to save the 7th for the end. But one of the things I found interesting is how these steps, they don't seem to be linear as much as they're each a doorway, and they each have their own interconnectedness. And I'm sure one of you will be illuminating on, what is the essence of, for example, loving yourself. But I know for me, a realization I had was I am not expressing myself because I still need to reconcile with some self-criticism, which falls under that umbrella of loving myself. And so it's just so fascinating how these steps are their own portal to healing, which caught me by surprise, and then it was exciting. And on that note, I'd love for us to go through the first 6 steps. And I just want to say this loud and clear to everybody here, and I know this in some ways doesn't have to be said, but this book is very personal and practical in how the two of you explore these steps. Our goal today is not going to be to teach the book, the whole book. I sat with it thinking I need months with this, with the exercises and the practices. But for right now, as a source of inspiration for us, I'd love to just go one at a time. And I think the two of you have your own rhythm of how you may typically, take turns or so. And so when it comes to the first step, know yourself. Did either of you want to just share with everybody what is the essence? What's the promise of that particular step?
You need to know how you identify yourself. How do you know yourself? How do you hold your identity in the world and with your own self? So we are an onion. We are made up of so many levels of self. There is a gendered self. There is a familial self. There is your race, your religion. There is also your level of financial status, caste and class, etc. There is a national identity. Do I come from the global south or the global north? And we do not realize how much all these levels and layers of the onion of identity impact our behaviors and how we show up. So we have to unpack all these layers and get down to the source, the core of who we are, unconditioned by all these layers, to even begin that first step towards knowing yourself.
Thank you for that, Nilima. And before I go any further, I just want to make sure everybody here, if you have the workbook, there's a page 2 where if you want to capture notes along with the framework, you're welcome to do that. I also failed to tell everybody that one of the reasons we're having each of you just give a high-level preview of the steps is because once we're complete, I'm going to be inviting all of you who are here live to take a poll so that we can sense with you as an audience, which of these steps do you feel most called for us to go deeper into right now? Just to honor the limited time we have and your interest, we're going to be doing that poll at the end. So I just want to give you that heads up. So as you're listening, you might think, which of these speaks to me, which feels relevant or energizing or confronting, and we'll be able to crowdsource, and then I'll take Raj and Nilima into the areas of this framework that you're most interested in. So Nilima, thank you for that. And I appreciate so much in the book, there are multiple frameworks and thought exercises to invite somebody to unpack those layers that you just mentioned. Wonderful. And we may or may not be coming back to that. How about this topic of loving yourself? Raj, would you like to give us the essence from your standpoint of this step?
Yeah, so it's not automatic that if you know yourself, you're going to love yourself. For many people, that's a big challenge. And some people estimate, like Bruce Lipton said, 80 to 90% of people may not love themselves. And what are the consequences of that? There are many, many things. And we can go into that later if we like. But first of all, you isolate yourself. You don't believe you're worthy of your own love, and therefore you don't think you're worthy of anybody else's love. So even if other people profess to love you, you don't actually believe it, and eventually you shut them away. And the lack of self-love also then translates to a lack of self-care. Most people don't take care of themselves, their bodies, their souls, their spirit, their minds, right? All of that. We put all kinds of bad things in there. So without loving yourself, we are incapable of really loving others and receiving love from others, and ultimately having happiness and peace and joy in this life. So it's a very, very important step. It was a big challenge for me to actually transcend that particular step, but we can talk about that later if we have time.
Raj, thank you. And I'll probably be repeating myself, but in that section of the book as well, you both offer multiple practices, meditations, contemplations that are an invitation to deepen our love for ourselves and others. So thank you for that. Let's go to this third one, being yourself. Nilima, do you want to give us what is the essence of this step, please?
So in a way, kind of all these steps telescope into each other. So knowing yourself is about your identity, and in a way, many of your layers privilege you or underprivilege you. And therefore, in Be Yourself, you get to this place of, can I really step back from all these layers and stand in the truth of my being, my essence, unmask myself, and I have nothing to defend, nothing to promote, nothing to fear, and I can simply show up with the innocence that I am, that is resilient, because it's what we call presence, right? So presence is the core of our being, and we draw a lot from the work of the Enneagram, the wisdom of the Enneagram for this. And in a way, presence is the master key, because you have to cultivate presence to be able to then move into the next set of steps. So it all begins from there, the master key of authenticity and vulnerability. We can be yourself, feel safe to be yourself, and then become a psychologically safe for space for others as well, right? So when you are authentic, you allow others, you give others permission to be themselves as well. And then that's the kind of safe space in which you want to live and grow. So be yourself is cultivating presence.
There's a passage in that section. Raj, I texted you. This was one of 3 or 4 places in the book that just completely stopped me. And I just want to give an appreciation, but also for everybody here, just to build your own anticipation to get to page 76. I think that's the page it was. I could be off a page or two. It doesn't matter. But there's a section in the book that was titled The Rewards of Being Yourself. And I'm going to paraphrase because I don't have anything in front of me. But I just want to tell you, when I read that section, I sent Raj a text. I pulled a dare downstairs. I called a teammate. I said, we just need to read this page again and again and again and again, so that if we lose our way on our own healing journeys, we remember these rewards. And I'm just going to paraphrase something. You talked about how the energy that we use to be something other than ourselves, and what that constrains within us. I mean, you just gave a list, one after another. And when we free up the energy that is freed up, that can come from knowing and loving and then being ourselves, our creative capacity, our ability to innovate and solve difficult problems, the energy is there. Our relational capacity for relationships to get deeper and more meaningful almost in an instant is there. Our impact, not because we're trying, but because as a byproduct of the energy we now have and the authentic authority we have, is now amplified. And even our physical energy that's freed up, this essential vitality. That page in that section, to me, made a case for the entire book, because even though that was the rewards of being ourselves, I was reading it as these are the rewards of every one of these steps. Just an acknowledgement and thank you for giving us that lighthouse and that vision of what this makes possible. It's so meaningful, so meaningful.
I want to jump to choose yourself. And Raj, is this one that you want to unpack?
Well, John, you just mentioned lighthouses. I love this quote from Nilima Bhat, that lighthouses don't go running all over an island looking for boats to save. They just stand there shining.
Mm.
And that is presence. I'd be that lighthouse that's going to attract, energy around you and people around you. The next step is choose yourself. And this one is a little unusual. It really means choosing your past, choosing your present, and choosing your future. And the metaphor came to me at a silent retreat. But actually, all of these steps came to me in a silent retreat in 2018 at a Peace Village in upstate New York. And at lunchtime, when it's time to eat, because you're in complete silence, you're not allowed to communicate. And so you put your tray down and they just put food in it. You're not pointing to something and saying, I want more of this or less of that. And it occurred to me that's a good metaphor for life, that life is not a buffet and there's no menu that you can order to say, I'll have this kind of mother and this kind of father, and I'll be born in this country and this religion at this time in history, etc. You're given a tray full of stuff. And some of it may appear unappetizing, some of it might be bitter, but you need all of it. That's your curriculum. It's going to shape you and it's going to give you experiences and allow you to grow in a way that ultimately will lead to your soul expression. So, as Ramdas said, neither friend nor foe alike, everyone is there as your teacher. So you can't change your past, but by choosing it, you step out of victimhood. And you say, wow, I don't know why I've had to go through those difficult experiences. I'm sure someday I'll figure it out and I'll see the gift in that. So, and that's choosing your past. And then choosing your present is about gratitude, and choosing your future really is about embracing and saying yes to that call to adventure that then takes us on our own hero's journey that each of us has to be on. If we're going to evolve ourselves, we have to say yes to those adventures that await us. Otherwise, we'll remain a caterpillar. We'll never become that butterfly, because if human beings have to choose to evolve, caterpillars don't have a choice.
There's a quote in the book from Andre Agassi, who many here may know his story, where he says, just because I didn't choose my life doesn't mean I can't take ownership of it. Just because I didn't choose my life doesn't mean I can't choose to choose it. And I agree. For me, I was caught by surprise on what that actually meant. And then I saw how meaningful that is, to really reframe my story as something that happened for me and not to me, as you wrote, Nilima, in Shakti Leadership. Express yourself. Now, in my notes, Nilima or Raj, does either one of you want to take this one? Nilima?
Express yourself. I mean, if you say yes to your hero journey, then you might as well go for the biggest outcome. And that is discovering your life purpose and then fully living into it. So expressing all your core values, your natural gifts and talents, putting them together to serve a higher purpose, leaving the world a better place, making a difference. So expressing your full potential and not dying unlived. But my Guru Swami Shivananda would say, eating, sleeping, drinking, a little laughter, much weeping. Is that all? Don't die here like a worm. Wake up, attain immortal bliss. So there is all this in this step. How do you discover your life purpose, your higher purpose, so that you can express it? So that includes your values and your natural gifts and talents, all that life trained you for. Nothing is an accident. Follow your bliss, if not follow your heartbreak. And then we bring it together with dialoguing the higher self, which is your own wise self that can speak back to your human self. And then you put it all together to arrive at a sense of a destiny you want to live into.
In the book, I really appreciated that you brought two perspectives on expression of ourself. One was the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, which you kind of you reposition or present that journey as the navigation through a challenge or a trauma, and then the gift and the return. But you also have a framework that you share, and maybe we do or don't double click into this today. I just want to entice everybody to be energized to get to this passage where you also point out that there may be an alternative, that maybe we can participate in our evolution and not always have to come from a crisis in order to have that post-traumatic growth. Maybe we can actually go through our own process without that crisis, and that the way you have an alternative framework there. It's enjoyable for those of us who seem to always need the crisis.
Thanks for spotting that, John, because in a way, this is the elixir from my hero journey work. I asked myself, really, do we have to keep growing from crisis and trauma? How painful is that? Isn't, come a time where we can grow from a good place to a better place? And that's when I came up with the conscious hero journey map, right? So if people are interested in that, we can go into that at some point.
Beautiful. Let's go to the 6th step. And as I said earlier, I wanted to invite both of you to give a high-level invitation into the first 6, because we're going to come to the 7th separately. So for the 6th and final one, Nilima, did you want to address this one as well?
Yes. So this is
Please.
Complete Yourself, and it's about becoming whole. And there are many frameworks for what is wholeness. And, the Jungians would say the search for the lost half, that somehow everything comes in polarities. And we tend to have chosen to express one and ended up not expressing the other, leaving it lost or suppressed or unfinished in some way. So looking at the fourfold self at a minimum to achieve psychological wholeness, I would call it the wise fool of tough love. It's like the simplest way to remember the fourfold self that Eric Berne would talk about. You have a parent self and a child self inside you, and you have to stand in your aware adult and have access to the healthy versions of both. So that's what we call the elder and the child archetype inside us. And that is the wise fool. Then you also have the inner masculine and inner feminine self, the anima, the animus, and that sacred wedding, that sacred union, inner wedding that you have to create to become the Ardhanarishwar, the androgynous self, regardless of gender, that inner balance. So that is the tough love. The tough is the masculine, healthy masculine that knows how to draw boundaries. Love is the healthy feminine. This is not gender. This is an orientation that knows how to care and share and, relate and include. The masculine gets the tasks done. The parent self, the elder self, draws the moral high road boundaries, shows the higher path, the higher way. The child self remembers to be foolish and lighten up and play and know not to take themselves seriously. So how do we cultivate all these 4 poles inside us so that we are truly psychologically whole? And that gives us not just a resilience, it also gives us the full complement of power, our Shakti, available to each one of us. If you leave any one of these 4 undeveloped, you will fall at some crossroad. You will not cross successfully.
So what we've just done is Raj and Nilima have each given really just an invitation into 6 of these 7 steps. So the question is, which 2 or 3 steps are you most energized by or called towards at the moment? Raj and Nilima, let's just, and it's close. I mean, there's interest across all of these, but why don't we just honor Express Yourself and start there and see where we get. I appreciated the quote that you opened that passage with. Each seed has within it the potential to become a forest. And there was a quote in this section that also got my attention. To express yourself is to claim your place in the world, to say, I am here and I have something to offer. It's to step out from the shadows of self-imposed limitations, to hone and bring forth your unique gifts, and to change the world by your presence. And I think that was the moment where I stopped and I thought, gosh, I wonder if I've held back in expressing myself because of even some opportunities for deeper reflection in some of these other portals and steps in the journey. Anyways, Raj or Nilima, if either one of you feels called to go first, I just want to give an open space for both of you to share within this particular topic, maybe another layer, whether it's a story, a core lesson, a practice, or all of the above. Do either one of you want to go first?
Raj, why don't you go?
Sure. So we divide this step into three pillars, basically. The first one is the choice between growth and safety. In life, we continuously experience these forks in the road. One side lies growth, the other side lies safety. The status quo, what is already known and comfortable, and we feel, quite competent in that. Or on the other side, something new, something challenging, something that's going to stretch you, that's going to require you to evolve yourself. And if we constantly choose safety, then we will never grow. And we are meant to grow. I mean, we are here, as Richard Leider puts it, to give and to grow into who we are meant to be. And from that place, to have as big an impact in the world as we can. So we need to prioritize growth over safety. Take the path that feels a little scary. Step out of your comfort zone. That's the way you grow. Because otherwise, if you're not growing, you're basically dying. So that's really an important sort of mental framing. If you look at situations, which of these is going to allow me to grow? Now, sometimes the path of safety might be right because there might be too much risk on the other side. It may not be worth it. But generally speaking, we'll either step forward into growth or we'll step back into safety. And we need to be stepping forward always. The second dimension we talk about here is living consciously and not compulsively. Expressing yourself means doing that which is unique to you, which is authentic to you. A lot of people live compulsively. They simply act out of habit or out of common practice, what everybody else does. Therefore, that's what I do. This is what differentiates us from other species on this planet. Every other species lives from instinct and programming. They don't actually make decisions and decide how to do things, right? But for human beings, we have the ability and therefore the necessity to choose how we're going to respond. How do we live consciously? How do we act consciously? How do we speak consciously? How do we eat consciously, dress consciously? Every single thing should be done with full consciousness, with full awareness. Right. And so that's a big part of expressing your uniqueness as well, is your consciousness should inform the actions that you take. And then, of course, the third part is discover and live your purpose. And I'll hand it over to Nilima to talk about that part.
Just like the Ikigai framework, but that book became famous after we brought out this framework in our Shakti Leadership book 10 years ago now. It's really about looking at your core values, your natural gifts and talents, what causes your heartbreak, bliss, etc. And then we put it together in saying, claim your personal myth. Both Raj and I are fans of Joseph Campbell and how he talks about myth being a higher truth, a kind of a universal, eternal truth that you can deeply connect with at a very personal level. So find your personal myth, because that energizes you and enlivens you in a way no factual purpose can. So, find a way to tell the story of your life like it is a deep and empowering myth. So what's my purpose? What's my presence? What's my power? What's my pleasure? You come together with words such as I am, I can, I will. And these are all ways in which the archetypes that underlie that personal myth awaken in you. And we do know that to truly live into your purpose, you need to have drive and energy and inspiration, because without that fire in the belly and that fuel, you're never going to fully keep going until you reach that goal, right? So I think what I want to add here, Raj, is the thing of turn your purpose into your personal myth. And that just gives us so much more juice. And I talk about living the mythopoetic life. Why tell a rational story about your purpose when you can turn it into a mythopoetic statement? So it just makes meaning in symbolic ways, and really gives energy to then drive that purpose.
I want to ask each of you a follow-on question here. Raj, when you talk about growth versus safety, you share a story in the book. It's very personal, and there's many, but you share one about making not one, but several major career decisions. You even talk about just not knowing whether to stay with one university versus transitioning to another, and you acknowledge John Mackey for calling you out, calling you up, and saying, I think one of these is safety and one of these is growth. I want to invite you to share any of your own stories of where choosing growth versus safety turned out to be a healthy choice, because you share some of these in the book, and I think that could be inspiring. Of course, hindsight's always 20/20. Good decisions. Conscious capitalism has done well and helped many people, but we all know what it's like in the moment to not know which direction to go. So maybe your story can be an inspiration.
Sure. So I'll share that one where I was at Bentley University. I was tenured. I had a good position there. We had started conscious capitalism. I was very, very comfortable. But then I got an offer from Babson College to go there and bring conscious capitalism to Babson College. And, I had been asking the president at Bentley that I don't want to be teaching marketing and strategy anymore. I just want to focus completely on conscious capitalism. Can we change give me a position that would reflect that? And they had said, no, we don't have the resources, etc. But as soon as I got that offer, I told her I'll be leaving. I'm going to go to Babson. And she said, oh, give me until 5 p.m. Okay. I don't sign anything. And sure enough, within a few hours, they came back with an offer for a chaired position. If I added it all up, this was now significantly more money than what Babson was offering me. It was comfortable in the sense that there was no risk. I already knew all the people, the players, they knew me, etc. And so it became a dilemma. What do I do now? Right. And then when I thought about it, I said, well, certainly I'm not going to grow if I stay. I mean, John Mackey, as you said, when I asked him for his input, said, yeah, choose between growth and safety. Where are you going to grow? I said, well, Babson certainly would require me to grow. It's a new environment. It's very well known in the world for what it does in entrepreneurship. We have a larger opportunity there to create conscious entrepreneurship, etc. And then I had to ask myself, I've been a proponent of conscious capitalism, which said it's not only about the money, right? Money is not the only game in town. There are many other things that matter. And I said, how can I make this decision just based on money? And, over a 5-year period, it added up to a sizable amount of money that we were talking about. So I then made the decision to choose growth over safety and not make it all about money. And again, in hindsight, yes, it certainly did require me to grow. And I'm glad I made that decision. But it wasn't easy at the time, I have to tell you.
As you're sharing this story, Raj, I happen to be watching everybody on gallery, and I can see through nods of heads. How many of you have a crossroads or a decision in your work or your lives right now where you can see that there may be a utility to contemplating growth versus safety? Yeah, I can see quite a few folks appreciating for themselves what this may mean. Thank you for sharing that. Nilima, I want to come over to you. You shared how this conscious relationship with our purpose in the narrative that we create is so key in expressing ourselves. I want to share with you, Nilima, something that you said to me about 5 years ago when you first visited our community. And I'm sure you'll recognize what I'm going to say, and then ask you a question about this. You shared with me, this was in 2021-ish, when all of us were finding our way. And you shared this question, an invitation, to consider that maybe everything that's happening in the world, we all remember what it was like in our personal world, in our professional world, maybe everything that's happening is part of our evolutionary purpose, which was an invitation to consider in some way, maybe this is all happening for us instead of to us. And I want to connect that offering to what I learned about you reading this book. You shared so much of your story that I didn't know, that you were in a relationship that after 30 plus years, you decided to find the courage to make a change. And you talk very openly in the book about how this is still a part of your story today, the navigation of this, and how it is still something you're working through with yourself, with your children. I'd be curious to hear anything you'd love to offer today on whether it's through the lens of your personal journey in seeing what happens to us as something that's happening for us. Anything else you want to offer on what it means to see everything that's happening as part of our evolutionary purpose? Because in the book, you so courageously and openly share how you're doing that today. And I'm just curious, anything you want to say to that with this audience here?
Yeah, thanks for asking about that, John. I think leaving a 32-year-old marriage that by all parameters would have seemed like a very successful one took everything. And it was the real step of growth over safety. And you realize as you go through life, I turned 60 this year, you have to keep expressing all those parts of yourselves that are yet to be expressed. So, in the Indic way, they would say bhumika for every role you play out. So I played the role of a good daughter. I played the role of a good wife. I really helped my husband recover from his colon cancer, and he acknowledges that he's alive because of me. I played the role of a good mother. I waited until they were 29 and 32 years old till I finally went past the roles to the soul, right? So a day comes where you play your sacred role and you're done playing it. And then it's time to really give voice and wings to your soul. And through all the roles I played, yes, my soul was expressing itself. But beyond that, there was still Nilima beyond the roles. And she was ready to now fly. She was ready to come out. And had I not taken that step, I believe I would have got very seriously sick and I could eventually die prematurely. So that's how serious it was. And that's how significant a decision it was. And they talk about, I think it's a Ane Nin quote, which says, and a day comes when the risk of remaining tight in a bud is greater than the risk of blossoming. So I reached that point. And looking back, actually, there was no choice. And that's where it became the conscious hero journey that I had coined many years ago, maybe like 7 years before I actually did it myself, where you wait for the evolutionary impulse. And for me, it was a sense of aridity and completion that I'm hanging around in something that's actually no longer a living thing. And then to give yourself consciously to a dissolution of some identity. So I let my married woman identity die. And then you engage some unrealized self. So I took on my free spirit, the Nilima who was always free regardless of all the bonds she gave herself to. I reclaimed her. And then there is evolution. My life just took off in ways I would never imagine. It was always great and it just got even better. And then comes the resolution, which is you have to bring that elixir back. So healing leaders, this work, this conversation, the person I am today, the life I now live as a sovereign single woman in Pondicherry, giving myself fully to enlightenment, enlovement, and embodiment is the gift I'm now giving myself. So I hope that answers your question.
Wow.
I think it does more than answer my question.
That's beautiful, Nilima. Beautifully expressed.
I think in some ways you answered a question for many people here. What a gift. What a gift to get this time with each of you. I have one more question, and then I'm going to ask all of you who are here, if today has inspired you, we have an invitation for you to take a very small action as a way of thanking Raj and Nilima. But I want to get to this last question. And it's going to be about the final section of the book. There's a quote in the book that says, "The wound is probably not your fault, but healing is your responsibility." You quote Gabor Mate, who talks about the wisdom of trauma. Trauma is one of 3 different aspects of healing you write about. When he says trauma is not something, it's not just something that shapes our behaviors and our worldview. It holds the potential for insight, healing, and transformation. When we as individuals, communities, acknowledge trauma and actively work through it, we foster collective healing. When we confront our wounds with compassion, we reconnect to our authentic selves and gain wisdom that can guide us towards greater wholeness, understanding, and empathy. Now, trauma is only one dimension of what you explore in this final chapter on healing. But what I really appreciated is when I began the book, I really thought the whole book was going to be what was in that 7th step. And I came to realize every one of those steps is actually a portal into its own opportunity to heal. But in the final section, you address healing really directly. But for now, Raj and Nilima, I'd love to come to you with this final invitation. If there's anything you'd love to share by way of your personal journey, what you've learned, or what you think may be most meaningful to share at this moment with this group about this topic of healing. Just want to give space for that. Does either one of you want to go first?
Yeah, this is a big one, right? So this is healing your psychological wounds and traumas. About 13 million Americans have been diagnosed with PTSD, but I believe all of us carry some degree of PTSI, post-traumatic stress injury. But I think it's a universal human condition. It's just part of living. Just being born a human baby is traumatic for the baby and for the mother, a little bit for the father too, I think, but certainly for the baby and the mother, right? And then there are predictable traumas that happen to all of us in childhood. And then there are traumas that visit us as we go through life. And there's personal trauma that happens, things that happen to you, bad things, terrible things, abuse, neglect, that should not have happened, but that imprinted on your being. Or there are good things that need to have happened but did not happen. A child that was never held, for example, who might have been in an orphanage or did not have parents who gave that love. That's trauma as well. So there's personal trauma that all of us have experience of. There is family trauma, things that happened to your parents as they were growing up, traumatic experiences. You weren't born for those, you weren't here, but you grew up in the shadow of those traumas, in the energy field that was created as a result of those unhealed traumas of your parents. And then, of course, there's ancestral trauma. Epigenetics is now revealing that things that happened multiple generations ago in your lineage could still be impacting you today in your behavior, in your reactions to things. If you have irrational fears, for example, that's a clue that something may have happened. And therefore, that is also something that needs healing. And then there's collective trauma. And John, you mentioned the pandemic. I mean, now we can look back, but just think about what it was, what a terrible thing it was worldwide. It was traumatic. And yes, there were gifts in it, certainly as well. And that's part of the message of this, that when you heal trauma, there is a gift waiting on the other side. So these are the 4 kinds of trauma. And of course, I've got many examples of those in my history that I've written about in quite some detail in Awaken, and a little less detail here. But what is the key message of that? Okay, so we have trauma. Now, what do most people do? They minimize and deny. First of all, they say, well, I don't have trauma. I didn't go to Afghanistan. I didn't go to Vietnam. I didn't go to I was not a first responder, so why should I whine about my little problems? Life is hard and suck it up. And that's not a healthy response, because there's always somebody who had more suffering than you. It doesn't mean that your suffering is irrelevant or that you don't need healing. Right? So that just becomes a way to dismiss the possibility of healing. So what do most people do in our society? They basically hide their trauma. There's a shame associated with admitting that, yeah, this happened to me, or I was abused, or whatever it is, right? And so people hide it, but then they have to live with themselves, so they numb it. There's plenty of numbing mechanisms. Our entire economy is built largely on numbing mechanisms, whether it's alcohol or drugs or food or any kind of escapism. It's social media, even a lot of entertainment. We numb it through those escape mechanisms. We get the short-term high of forgetting our trauma for a little while, and then we wake up, we still have the trauma. And this is really the pattern for most people. Certainly my father had to have several drinks every day to be able to have any kind of joy in his life, and then take a sleeping tablet to go to sleep. But there's a constructive way to deal with it. As James Baldwin said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. So we have to face up to the reality that, yes, this did happen. It was significant. It has impacted my life, right? So we have to reveal it, talk about it. Nothing heals in secrecy. No trauma can ever be healed in silence without talking about it. So you have to reveal it to yourself, to your loved ones, to therapists. You could write a book about it if you choose, but you have to bring it into the open. As Mr. Rogers said, if it's mentionable, it's manageable. So we have to do that. And then you have to reveal it and allow yourself to feel it. And that is painful. In the process of confronting my own traumas, writing Awaken, I went through all kinds of physical discomfort and sleepless nights. And I revisited a lot of painful things. But you reveal it and feel it in order to begin to heal it. And that's the beginning of the healing journey. And the good news is we're living at a time when there are so many modalities available for healing trauma. There's so many great teachers, from Gabor Mate to Bessel and de Kock to so many others. And there's lots of different approaches: acceptance and commitment theory, biofeedback, EMDR, with the eye movement, hypnotherapy, inner child work, internal family systems, psychedelics. There's so many, neurofeedback, somatic therapy, etc. So there's a lot of ways. We do not have to live and suffer with trauma. And then when we do take the steps to heal, then we have the gift on the other side. We mentioned earlier post-traumatic growth. You are stronger because you had that trauma and healed it than if you never had the trauma to begin with. The strongest people in this world are not people who have sailed through life without a scratch on them, but the people who have been out there and have been, the slings and arrows and everything else, and they have dealt with it, and they have risen from it and grown from it and healed from it. So it's like the Japanese metaphor of kintsugi, right? When you put a piece of pottery back together with gold dust and glue, it's stronger than the original piece, and it's a work of art. That's us. We are stronger because we have healed where we were more vulnerable, and now we're a source of strength in the world. So that is really the power of healing, and that's something that I think we can all experience and then become a gift. The Wisdom of Trauma, a beautiful documentary by the Ormate, basically addresses that there is a gift, there's a wisdom in that trauma if we choose to harvest it.
Raj, thank you. And I'm very hopeful that this book and the work that the two of you have created here is going to be so timely because of all of the suffering, because of the need to reclaim our humanness while everything is arising in computing technology. We need to be our most conscious selves to navigate whatever we're creating, whatever we're facing. Nilima, anything you wanted to add on the topic of healing?
I've been a healer. I've been working with cancer patients for years and years. And yet, when I had to deal with my own trauma, I tried everything. And finally, what really worked was taking a flight halfway around the world to Peru and going on an ayahuasca journey. And it was epic. I kind of said, you know what, I hate doing this stuff. But if I have given birth to 2 children, if I've endured that kind of pain and discomfort, then what is an ayahuasca? So that's the attitude I took. And I went with a lot of sincerity, and I knew I'm not just doing it for recreation. I'm doing it in a way for the highest possible intention I had, which is to heal from my wound in this lifetime, which was a kind of a Stockholm syndrome wound, which I just wasn't able to get over. And I think the ayahuasca finally did it for me. So I would not recommend doing psychedelics just for entertainment, but as something that can heal trauma. If you can find the right shaman, you can go to the right place where genuine people are doing the work, then do that. It works.
Mm. Nilima, thank you. Raj, thank you. I want to encourage all of you, if you've not done it already, in the workbook that we gave you, there is a link to, you can scan a QR code, you can find the URL right here. If you have a digital copy, you can just literally like click on this and it'll take you to pre-order a copy of the book or purchase multiple copies if you're inspired to. For any of you who are curious about us at Exchange, if you want to experience one of our introductory workshops, you can talk to our team, learn about our certification. There's information on the last page. It's nice to see some new friends as well as many of you from our community today. But if you're inspired, this is a link to a LinkedIn post. And this LinkedIn post is designed, you'll see, to help spread this work. Raj and Nilima don't know anything about this post. I just said, hey, I'm going to do some things to try and spread the work. I created a little carousel with some quotes from the book and curiosities the book brought up. But I have a specific ask. Are you ready? My ask is, can you make a comment around why the world needs this work right now, this book right now? And if you're inspired, share this post with your network. Encourage others to take a look at what Raj and Nilima have put forward. Raj and Nilima, I just want to express tremendous thanks to you on behalf of the Exchange community. Right? We're a global group of facilitators and consultants and leaders who our interest is so aligned with yours. And so you can't stop me from saying this. On behalf of our community, I'm going to do everything I can so that this is not the last time this work is brought into our community this year. Whatever I can do to talk the two of you into bringing this deeper, further in. Because I read this book and thought, we need about 3 days with this. We need 6 months with this. So I hope you, Raj and Nilima, you're open to me finding ways to keep bringing this back to our global network. Of course, any of you who are here as guests today, glad you were here. You want to learn about who we are at Exchange, you know where to find us by now.
Thank you all, and thank you, John, for the incredible love and care you put into this experience. My partner, Neha, talks about sacred exchange. That every encounter that we have in life, it has the potential to be a sacred one. And I think you really put the word sacred in front of Exchange, or what you do through this community and through this technology that you have perfected, how to bring people together and connect them deeply, even though we're not nearby physically. So thank you. This was a lovely, lovely experience for us. Every book is like a child, and you want the best for that child, and every child is worthy, but I think this book has the potential to help a lot of people.
There's nothing wrong with one of the kids being a favorite.
Yeah, so, I think, as I said, this book, I think, deserves some love and support in the world, so it's not easy. Putting a book out in the world is not easy nowadays.
Yeah.
With the avalanche of self-publishing, now you got like so many books, it's hard to get the attention,
Yeah. Well, it's an honor. So thank you. And it's an honor. Thanking both of you one more time for the gift of all of your time. Nilima, it's late. Raj, you're moving back to back. You both have given so much of yourselves. Thank you. I know so many here are absolutely enlivened and energized to read the book, to share the book. And we're so grateful for your time today. Raj, Nilima, thank you. We will see you again.
Thank you for your time and your generosity.
Thank you. Lots of love to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.